Hi everyone, welcome to the GitHub and debugging code along. In this code along, we'll go over how to approach debugging and also how to resolve merge conflicts. So we'll start by going to the website and then clicking code along, going to stencil code, and then here you can git clone. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then I'm going to skip ahead. Okay, awesome. So now I skip to my IntelliJ and I'm in my code along 4 Git repository, and then we'll try to debug the program and figure out what's wrong. So we'll just start by running the app since I already have it. I'm just going to click run, and we run into an error from IntelliJ's error window. So in this case, this is what we call a compile time error. So this means that when we try to compile, or when Java tries to compile, because there is some sort of syntactical issue, it won't be able to compile and run. So these errors are on the easier side to identify because it's usually like a semicolon missing, and also the error window shows and suggests what the error might be. So I have this red squiggly line under my classes. So I'll start with the constants classes. And here on line 13, it tells me that I'm missing a semicolon. So I'm going to put that in, and that should resolve that error. And then now if I go to the alien class, which is also highlighted red, it says method call expected. And I have some warnings. So here I'm currently setting this face to an ellipse, but here I am missing a new keyword, which is why IntelliJ is telling me that it's expecting a method call, because it expects for me to call a constructor, but I forgot my new keyword. So I put that in, and then there's another squiggly line under app class, so I'm gonna go figure what the issue might be. So I'm calling get root on my pane organizer, but it says if I command click on it, it says that it cannot find declaration to go to. So I'm gonna step into my pane organizer class and figure out what could be the issue. So if I look at my get root method, oh, okay, I'm missing I miswrote the method name. I wrote get roots instead of get root. So if I delete that, then IntelliJ is able to register that as a method. So if we go back to our app class, now we have our root in the constructor of the scene. So now there is, if I look at the error problems window again, there isn't any warnings or issues. So now we're going to try running it since we resolved all of the compile time errors. So we click run, nothing shows up. We go back and we see a huge stack trace. So stack traces are useful whenever you try to identify an error, and it tells you what type of error has occurred and exactly where the error has occurred. So it started at app class, pane organizer class, array example class, and on line 21 of array example class, we see that it has thrown an array index out of bounds exception. So what could be a good way to figure this out? So here, what's very useful is to use a print line. So if you do stout tab, then that automatically corrects itself to system out print line, which is very, very useful for any sort of debugging. So here I'm going to put I. And what this is going to do is it's going to print out I every time the loop runs until the error occurs. And then we'll be able to see what the value of I was before there was an array index out of bounds exception. So with that print line, I'm going to run the app again. But we see that the issue is that the app doesn't even show up. But here, if we see, now our terminal has the eyes printed. And to me, this makes sense because we start from 0 and we go up to 10 before throwing an index out of bounds exception. So what else we can do is we can put a breakpoint here and then go back to app and then run it through the debugging window. So if we go, now we are in our debugging window. And what this allows us to do is check the contents of our numbers array and also check the index that we're on and what the value is at that index. So then we're going to step into the loop and figure out what's happening. So we print 1, 2, 3. So we're going to keep on going. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And there we have our index out of bounds exception. So once I becomes 10, it is going to throw an exception and exit. So based on this information, we can scroll back up. And here we can realize that we set numbers to a new integer array of length 10. And as you could tell from when we step through with the debugging window, we start at 0 and then we go up until 9 because arrays are 0 indexed. So I know how to solve this error because we just want to make sure that I never reaches 10. So one way to do it is to get rid of the equal sign, and that's going to prevent the loop is going to stop once I is 9 because 9 is the last value before I becomes 10. So now the array out of bounds exception is fixed, so I'm going to delete my print line because I don't need that anymore, and also quit out of the debugging window. So got rid of my print line. I can also get rid of my breakpoint, and now I get to run it again. So if I run it, okay, perfect. So now our alien shows up, and the app can run normally. So now we're gonna click on arrays. Awesome. That checks that all the indexes of the array are filled, and now I'm gonna click on array list. So if I click on array list, that reveals a very, very long stack trace that seems to go on for a while. So I see that it printed out the contents of the array, and it also printed out Andy before it threw a concurrent modification exception at array example .java at line 32. So we'll go to array example and figure out what could have potentially threw this error. So I'm gonna go and put a breakpoint again because that's where my error occurred. So now what we can do is quit the program and then go back to app and then click the debugging icon. And then now I'm going to click on array lists again, and this is going to send me to change array list method. So now I'm going to click step into again. So the difference between step over and step into is that step into steps into that method or into that loop, but step over skips the inner logic. So for instance, if I just like clicked step over, that's gonna automatically skip to the next rendition of the loop. Or if it's like a method, say that I have a constructor and then I call, like I have an alien equals new alien, and then I call alien.moveRight. But I don't want to step into the constructor because say I already know that my alien is created fine. I just want to check if my moveRight is working correctly. Then I would click step over when I'm on the alien constructor, and then I would step into moveRight method. This would make more sense as you experiment more with debugging, But when you're trying to figure out the inner logic of a method, step into is the button that you should click. So I'm going to rerun the debugger. Click array lists. And then now I'm back in it. So now I want to step into because I want to see the inner logic of the loop. So here, Cool Words has Andy at index 0, Django at index 1, and Codalong at index 2. And this is like the array example and the instance variables that we have. So I'm going to click step into, prints out the word Andy, perfect. And then I step into, and if word equals Andy, which is true because we're currently on index 0 and our word is Andy, we're going to remove Andy or word Andy from our array cool words. Awesome. So my cool words is now size 2, and then our next loop is going to start. So then we start going to some wild places in IntelliJ. This usually means that something went wrong, and I can assume that this is where my concurrent modification exception occurred. So what is concurrent modification exception? Concurrent modification exception is, as the name in a really jargony way explains, it tries to concurrently modify something, and then that causes an error. So, we notice that we have a for each loop. And if we do a for each loop, that means that if we have an array list, we check every single element in the array list. But this could potentially cause an issue. Say, for the example of Doodle jump, we have a for each loop, and we, for instance, try to remove platforms, and that could like potentially cause an issue with our for each loop. And the reason is, with for each loop, it kind of counts on the fact that all the elements are going to be there throughout the entire duration of the loop. So if we try to remove something while we're executing a for each loop, and we remove something, say we remove like a word from this.coolwords, then that's going to, so now the state of the array list has changed, and the for each loop is going to be like, wait, I expected all the elements to be there while I execute this loop, and now Andy's gone. And then it's going to throw a concurrent modification exception. So what could be a way to resolve this issue? Since the issue is that for each loop counts on the fact that nothing is going to be removed during its duration, and we really want to remove this word from our array list, we can just change it into a for loop, just a normal for loop. So I'm going to comment this part out. To comment, you highlight that part and you click command / and that is going to comment that part out. So now I'm going to have a basic structure for a for loop. Now let's think about this. So a for loop has to begin with int I. Could be called anything, int I or int j, but I set that to 0 because we want to start from the beginning, and then I should be less than, since we're looping through an array list, what we can do is to this dot cool words dot size. So instead of using a length field, an array list has a method that returns the size of its list, which is size. And then I increment my I. So this is going to achieve the same thing as what I tried to do with my for each loop, which is iterating through my array list. But an issue is now word is not, it can't resolve what symbol word means because we never set it to anything. In our for each loop, it used to be here, but now we have to manually instantiate the variable word. So what we can do is string word, and this would be equal to get an index of an array list, instead of using angled brackets, this is wrong. What we can do is use our get method. Oops. Nope. Perfect. So now this is basically doing the same thing, but what's happening is we access each word at that index of the array list instead of looping through, like thinking it as like every single word of the loop, but rather every single index of the loop. So this should hopefully get rid of that issue with concurrent modification exception. So we can try by running it and see if it changed anything. So I'm gonna go here and I'm gonna click array lists. Yay, awesome. So now we just have Andy and Codalong. So that gets printed out because we print Andy first. Amazing. So now we are going to try moving the alien up. Run it. Okay, so it doesn't move when I click move. Oh, and we can also tell that we have okay, because I've clicked move left and move right multiple times, we have a very long stack trace. But it seems like it's happening in line 35 of Pane Organizer. So it throws an error when I try to move the alien. Interesting. So anything that involves me calling on the alien is throwing a null pointer exception. So a null pointer exception usually occurs when I try to work with a variable, but the variable isn't properly instantiated. So that variable is of type null, and then when I try to do like move left or move right on a null object, it's going to throw a null pointer exception. So that means maybe something is wrong with our alien. So I'm gonna command click, which is gonna show me the declaration of alien. And we see that we do declare properly, but unlike border pane root, which is another instance variable we have, we can see that alien is gray. So this means that it's not been instantiated. Strange. So now I'm going to go to my constructor and just read through. So that's where we instantiate our alien. And here we realize that this alien is a local variable. So if I do type alien, alien equals new alien, this is like a separate alien variable that is not our instance variable. And we instantiate this local variable instead of the instance variable. So when we're down here, we can't access this alien because this is a local variable in our constructor. So we're going to get rid of this type. We see that it turned purple, which means that now it understands that it's supposed to be an instance variable. But for style points, we always have to put this dot in front of our instance variables. So now we know that we set this alien properly to a new alien. So hopefully this will get rid of the null pointer exception. Stop. We're going to go to app. We're going to run it again. Awesome. So now if I click, okay, perfect. So now if I click, the alien moves, although it's moving wrong for some reason. And we check back to our terminal and we see that that there's no stack trace. Awesome. So now when we run it again, perfect. We see that now it moves properly, or actually it's moving in the wrong direction for some reason. But when we go back to our terminal, we see that no error stack trace has printed. So we resolved the null pointer exception issue and our alien moves. So to go over what we've done so far, compile time errors are usually syntactical errors. So for instance, making a typo in your method call or forgetting a semicolon. So those should be on the easier side of resolve by looking at your problems window. And then now we addressed runtime errors, which is when you run it and there's some sort of a more logical error. For instance, forgetting to instantiate a variable or setting the wrong bounds for your array when you're looping through it, which is a little trickier to find, but with through your stack trace, you can figure out where the error might be occurring. So now we are going to move on to logical errors. So we see that when we run it, we have our alien, but the alien doesn't have its eyes, which we would really like to have. So we're gonna go back to our program and try to figure out why our eyes are missing. So we'll go to the alien class for this, because the first instinct, for me at least, is that maybe since the eyes are supposed to be a part of the alien, maybe it's in the alien class. So we see that we have our variables, left eye and right eye, and we see that we do instantiate the variables. So since we actually have something that does exist, it means it's related to the visual aspects of the alien. So we'll go through. We have our root pane passed into our alien class constructor. We have new ellipse, we have set fill, we have another new ellipse for left eye and right eye. We set the X location. Interesting. So, oh, I see. So here we can see that we get children to the root and we add the face, which means we're going to get the children of the root pane, and then we're going to add face to the list of children. But I do realize that we only do that to the face, and we don't add our left eye nor our right eye. So a very handy method that we can do with getting children is that we can add all to the list of children. So this method can take in multiple arguments. So here I can just add left eye and right eye, and hopefully this adds our left eye, right eye ellipses graphically to the pane and we can see it. So we'll go back to our app and then we'll run it again. Perfect. So now we have our alien, which is great. So amazing. So we see that it moves, but we see that it's still moving in the wrong direction, which is not what we want. So we're gonna go back to our alien class, maybe. So let's look at our move method. Okay, move right sets the X location, and takes in an X, which subtracts the set center X. So we pass in face get center X plus constants distance X, which seems correct since in JavaFX the x-axis goes from lesser to greater, like a normal x-axis does. So it should be correct that we're adding by a certain offset, and for move left that we're subtracting by a certain offset. So this all seems correct. So let's use a print line again for this situation. Since it's not like an explicit runtime error, rather than using a debugger, this would be a good place to use a print line. So I'm going to do South tab, and then I'll get the faces. I'll print. Okay, how about I print the faces center position before and after I call set x loc. So now I'm going to go to app class, I'm going to run it again, and click move right. So we moved right twice. And we see that when it gets called in the beginning, our X position is 150, and then after the call, we are at 140, and then after 140, we're at 130. So based on this, we can tell that even though we're adding by constants dot distance x, our X position is actually decreasing, which is not what we want. So we're gonna get rid of these print lines. And then I'm going to do another print line and print what the value of constants is, distance x is. So I'll go back to app and I'll run it again. Okay, I moved right. So we see that our offset value is actually -10. So we'll go to our constants class and we see that we are moving by -10. So we're adding -10 every time we want to move right, which is not what we want. So I'm going to get rid of this negative, and hopefully that is going to fix it. I'll run it again. Perfect. Now our alien moves right when I click move right, so hopefully it moves left when it... Okay, perfect. So now we were able to address the move logical errors, and we were able to resolve arrays and array lists. Perfect. So just to do another recap of what we've done so far, when you have a compile time error, refer to your problems window. When you have a runtime error, try using the debugger and place a breakpoint where your stack trace has raised an error. And then step through that part of your code to see what variables are changing, what could potentially be causing the issue. So it helps a lot to use the debugger since it shows you everything. And for logical errors, print lines are your friend, and you can put a print line and then see how the value of a certain variable or whatever you want to try to figure out is changing, like I did with like aliens X position. And then you can... print lines are great, and you can also use the debugger for it. I'm pretty sure if you wanted to figure out what's happening to your code. So the reason is because, so if I click on the right here, and then we get to see the value center X, center Y, radius X, radius Y. I click it again. Oh. So as it's like moving through, we'll be able to see what the position is, or we will be able to see what the constants are. But for logical errors, it's better to use print lines. Perfect. So now we'll briefly go over issues regarding Git. So because for this video, it's difficult to like simulate a merge conflict, I'll briefly go over what potential merge conflicts you could have and tips to resolve it or tips to prevent them. So the basic command for pushing to your Git is git add -A git commit -n, and then you put a message in quotes, and then you git push. And a general practice for partnered projects is that you always git pull before you work on any code. So if I forgot to tell my partner that I coded something with my Doodle, and then I just git pushed, and the other partner didn't know, it could potentially cause a merge conflict if my partner just like started coding without git pulling. But if they git pull, they'll have the most recent code on their local server, and then it shouldn't cause any problems when they try to git push. So merge conflicts can happen when two partners commit changes on the same lines of code without updating each other's local copies of the code. So for fixing merge conflicts, because there isn't a good visual representation, I'll try to be clear with my words. But like you did in your lab for GitHub lab, there's going to be a header when there is an issue with merge. So it's going to be like highlighted in red because it's not going to be syntactically correct. And one's going to show your partner's version of the code, and then below is going to be like your version of your code, the local version. So when you see that issue, you should figure out and talk to your partner about whose version of the code you're going to keep, or if you want to keep parts of both, you can talk it out and like resolve the issue. And then you delete all the like garbage header like signs, um, and then deleting that. And then after you do that to every single part where the merge conflict has occurred, you should git push again, and that should merge the branches together and resolve all the errors. So how to prevent this? A good way to prevent it would be to communicate. So text before, or text, email, message before you start coding, and let them know which part you worked on, and then tell them that you get pushed, and always git pull. Even if you were not communicated beforehand that your partner did something to the code, I would highly recommend git pulling before doing anything to your code. And then always remember to put a helpful message whenever you git add, git commit, and git push. And also another tip is it usually occurs when I try to fix, like, let's say I fix the color of my alien's face, and my partner also try to change the color, that's gonna cause a merge conflict. But if I just work within the alien class, and my partner's working in the array example class, like if I'm in separate files, separate parts of the code, that also reduces the chance of a merge conflict. So working in separate parts, also communicating and git pushing and git pulling religiously is going to save you so much headache for any other, basically every other collaborative coding projects. So I hope this helps to navigate Git. So that was everything for this code along. I hope this helped people with debugging process and resolving Git conflicts. And I wish you the best of luck for Doodle Jump and every other project. Thank you for watching.